Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Main, and this is the Handgun World podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode 599, coming out on July 24th, Sunday, July 24th, 2022. Sorry, I've been away for a while. Just completed a 3-week vacation in the Philippines, where my wife is from, and had a good time there. There's no Second Amendment there, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That's kind of the subject of this episode 599. So, episode 600 coming up next week. I have a special guest for episode 600, and I am going to probably be recording that interview this week. You're going to enjoy it. I'm just going to leave it at that, but please tune in to my 600th episode. I'm starting my 14th year. This podcast started July of 2009. So here it is, July 2022. I've completed 13 years, starting my 14th year. I never would have thought it would have run that long. I may not have the most listeners to a handgun show, but I probably have one of the longest. There's a few I can name that have been going longer than I have. Michael Bain has, Ken Blanchard has, and there may be a few others. But I really appreciate you folks listening and taking the time. Maybe Student of the Gun might have been running since before 2009. I'm not sure. And all three of those podcasts I just mentioned, they're great shows. You need to listen to those. Remember, this show is brought to you by Concealment Solutions. They are one of my sponsors. They are makers of fantastic holsters. As a matter of fact, that's mostly what I carry. The outside the waistband holsters by Concealment Solutions. They're the most concealable outside the waistband Kydex holsters that I know of. And I've tried several. So check them out, concealmentsolutions.com. You get a 10% discount just by using the code Handgun World at checkout. Make that all one word, Handgun World, at the checkout. That's your discount code. So I want to talk about no Second Amendment for 3 weeks. So on July 1st, I went to the Philippines with most of my family members that are from the Philippines. It was a good vacation. It was a great vacation. It's my 7th trip to the Philippines. I like the country. So much different than America. Such a different lifestyle. Much more laid back lifestyle. You know, in the Philippines, they believe in being very relaxed and very happy, which I wish that Americans would learn some lessons from that. We get too stressed out here in America, me included. I'm not exempting myself from that. I think that we get too stressed out about too many things that we probably shouldn't. We need to relax. They're very happy culture there in the Philippines. The Philippines is not nearly as rich as America, but I think we focus too much sometimes on our riches here. And we don't do a good enough job of counting our blessings, which they're very, very good at doing that in the Philippines. They've learned how to live with less. A very minimalist culture there, which I kind of like. Kind of considering when it's time for me to pull that plug on working. I'm considering a retirement there. I'm not 100% sold on that yet, but I am strongly considering that. You know, our money, our American dollar goes a long way. Right now, an American dollar gets you about 55 or 56 Philippine pesos. And that's pretty good. They have some inflation over there like we have, but not nearly as bad as we have it. And it's a fun place to visit. They don't enjoy the luxuries quite that we do here in America, but I think sometimes we pay too much of a price here in America for what we have. Count your blessings. Be thankful for what we have here in America. I put out a post on Facebook and a tweet on Twitter when I was there. There was a lot of debate and a lot of chatter going on about the Constitution after the United States Supreme Court put out 2 very important decisions just before I left. Be thankful we have a Constitution to debate. Some places don't have a Constitution like America. In fact, in the Philippines, they don't. And that's why I'm going to call this episode 3 Weeks with No Second Amendment. Because there is no Second Amendment in the Philippines. There was a sign I saw just outside someone's house on a fence. And it said police, spelled P-U-L-I-S. That's how they spell police. And there was a phone number, a local number, police, and a local phone number. That is their Second Amendment in the Philippines. Call the police. Well, maybe a little bit more than that, but I thought it was interesting that they kind of promote that, call the police. In the Philippines, they have a Philippine National Police. There's some good things and there's some bad things about that. I'll get into that in this episode. I met with an international listener when I was there. You know, I don't get to meet very many listeners or viewers. Some of you are watching me on YouTube because I'm putting the first 15 to 20 minutes of every episode now on YouTube. Plus, please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't. There's a lot of good videos on there. I also have another one called Real Talk with Bob. I'll put the link to Real Talk with Bob. I don't discuss firearms over there. I discuss a lot of other very important subjects. So check out that channel as well. But I met this international listener, and his first name is Wo. Many thanks, Wo. I'm not going to use your last name because I don't know if I really have the permission to do that, but Wo's a great guy. He's been listening to me for a long time, many years. Back in the early days when I first got started, and I was asking him about shooting in the Philippines. There's a gun culture in the Philippines. They do have IDPA and IPSC matches, which I was happy to hear. Next time I go there, I'm going to get together with Wo and I'm going to go shoot an IDPA match in another country. That's going to be kind of cool. But the Second Amendment in the Philippines it's a May issue, Second Amendment. He told me that you have to get a permit, you have to get a license to own firearms. Okay, so I guess they don't believe that it's an inherent right that you have to own a firearm for self-defense. You got to get permission from the government. Permission just to own the firearm and keep it pretty much in your house. A lot of people can pretty much forget carrying it in the Philippines because the Philippines is May issue. You have to do like New York State made you do, which the Supreme Court shot that down because it's a violation of United States Second Amendment. But in the Philippines, you have to show good cause. You have to show a good reason. You have to basically convince them that you need to carry a firearm. Now, me as a foreigner, I may never get a permit. If I'm ever over there, either for a long term or if I ever decide to live over there or retire there, I may never get a permit to actually carry. We have a keep and bear arms here, to bear arms. Well, they don't have that there. So, I don't know. Who knows? I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, if I come to it. But so for 3 weeks, I was over there with nothing but my tactical pen and my flashlight. I didn't even take my knife because I wasn't sure of the knife laws. I should have looked it up before I left. Next time I go, I'll look up to see what kind of knife laws are in the Philippines. But it was kind of weird not carrying a gun for 3 weeks. It was. How many of you ever been to a foreign country where you couldn't carry? I know Greg Ellifritz, active response training. He goes to South America a lot. I saw his Facebook posts. I follow Greg Ellifritz. Greg, if you happen to be watching or listening, here's a big shout out to you. I really appreciate your work. And he was in South America at the same time that I was in the Philippines. So I guess I'm not quite sure. I doubt that Greg can carry down there in some of those South American countries. If some of you have traveled down there, if you're Americans, let me know. But probably they don't have the same rights that we have here in the United States either. Give me some feedback if you know something differently. You can email me, handgunworld@gmail.com. You can put a comment under this video. You can, if you're listening to me on my audio podcast, you can send me an email, call my voicemail, 210-646-17 27. There's a voicemail I'm going to be covering pretty soon, too, by the way, in this episode. So it was weird. I felt kind of weird, kind of like I was always really missing something. I didn't have the ability to carry my firearm. And while I was in the Philippines, the incident at the Greenway Mall in Indiana happened. What a hero, Mr. Dickin. What a hero. And, I don't want to get into all the specifics of what happened. We think we know what happened, but we don't completely know what happened. But it looks like surveillance video showed that Eli Dickin engaged the active shooter, shot him dead. And he started shooting him about 15 seconds after the bad guy came out of a restroom in the mall. Instead of getting into all the specifics of how many shots, in how much time, at what distance, here's a couple things I do want to say about that. First of all, thank goodness an armed citizen was there and willing to act. How about that? I think the anti-gunners' argument that only police should carry guns just got blown out of the water big time. That argument just got destroyed. Mr. Dickin's 22 years old, and he saved who knows how many lives from being shot by a nutbag who went in with a rifle into a food court at a mall. And he was willing to act. I ask you the question, how many of you are willing to act? I mean, really. How many of you are willing to act? How many of you would know what to do? How many of you have the training to know what to do? Now, you don't have to have hundreds and thousands of hours of training, but I would suggest at least, get some training beyond your concealed carry permit. And if you're in a state like me in Texas, where you don't even need a concealed carry permit anymore, at least get some basic level training, okay? Self-defense training. I'm not talking about safety training. I'm talking about self-defense training. How do you use this tool? How do you use this tool when you need to use it? And can you deliver? And can you get the job done when you have to? I did an episode a long time ago called Can You Pull the Trigger? I'm going to link to that episode. I'm going to link to it below this video, and I'm going to link to it in the audio podcast feed. Can you pull the trigger? Can you act? Do you know what to do? First of all, are you carrying your gun? See, we should all be thankful that Mr. Dickin was there to carry his gun. When I was in the Philippines, I couldn't carry. If something like that, and I went into a couple malls, I went into some public places, I went into some tourist places in the Philippines, went to Baguio City, which is one of the top tourist destinations in the Philippines, if not the top, Baguio City. If some nut job there decided that he or she wanted to start shooting, I guarantee you there was a 99.5% chance that there was nobody close by that could have stopped them. Now, I will say in the Philippines, here's a positive thing I'm going to say about the Philippine National Police. I don't like national police forces. I hope we never do that here in America. We don't need that. But I will say this about the Philippine National Police. If you go to a mall in the Philippines, there are armed guards at the entrance. You have to go through a metal detector. They screen you, and they do a pretty good job of running you through somewhat like airline security before you go into the mall. They check your backpacks. They check your bags. I don't think you're going to get into the mall with a rifle or a shotgun. And if you try to get in there with a handgun, they're probably going to find it. So, even though they don't let me carry in the mall, they are providing perimeter security. It's the same way when you go to a bank in the Philippines. Other countries might do the same. Whenever you go to public places, they usually have a pretty good amount of police there providing security. That's better than nothing. That's better than, not allowing me to carry and then not securing the place. So I will give them that. That's a positive. I'm going to talk about, I don't like nationalized police forces. So that's a negative, but at least in the Philippines, they are making a good attempt to protect people in public places, especially ripe targets for active shooters like malls and banks and places like that. You go to use an ATM in the Philippines, and most of the time there will be a guard there. If you go change money and you go to one of the money change places, or if you go to a Western Union to receive money or send money, there's going to be probably an armed police officer there. Sometimes there are armed police in the streets, like when I was in Manila, there were armed police in the streets in certain spots. Okay? So I'll give them that. And that's a good thing. But the 3 weeks I was there without a Second Amendment, that was kind of weird. I've been carrying a gun since 2005, so 17 years now. And so it's become a part of me. It's become a part of my wardrobe. It's become a part of my habits. It's a preparedness skill that I take advantage of. And if you carry a gun, you're a prepper. And many of you know for years I did Today's Survival Show, and I talked about a lot of common sense preparedness. And sometimes here on this channel and on this podcast, I talk about common sense, survivalism, modern survivalism. I talk about minimalism, which I think is also important. So it's something that I will compliment the Philippines on offering security, but it was weird not carrying a gun, not being able to prepare, not being able to engage in one of my survival skills. And not only protecting myself, but in the case that we just recently have seen, protecting the innocent lives of others. Because I can assure you of something, if I'm at a mall or any public place and I am carrying legally, and something goes down, if I have the ability to act, I will act. So I'm going to finish the video portion of this podcast by asking you an important question. Will you act? That's a serious question I think that you need to answer. And if you say, no, I'm not sure I would act, I would strongly urge you to figure out how to change that within yourself, because when you carry a firearm, you have a responsibility to at least protect yourself and the loved ones that might be with you that are being threatened. You got that responsibility. If you're not willing to accept that responsibility, in my opinion, don't carry a gun. I mean, just don't do it if you won't accept the responsibility to act. In the case that we all just recently saw here in America, the bad guy with a gun was stopped by a good guy with a gun. It happened. It's not just a phrase. It's not just a slogan. It's not just a rallying cry. It's reality. Okay, time to take a break. I'm going to end the video portion. Please like this video. Subscribe to this channel for those of you that are watching me on YouTube. Check the notes and the links below this video. And if you want, go to my audio podcast. You can listen to the rest of this episode on my audio feed, and I'll definitely be putting a link below so that you can do that. And I'll have a link there to my sponsors with all the discount codes that I've mentioned. Thanks again for watching and listening. For those of you watching me on video, you've just watched another video portion of the Handgun World podcast, a practical show done by a practical guy, and that is me. Audio listeners, stick around. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Thank you.